Hi everybody. Welcome to chapter P4-P5. In this unit we're doing factoring, all the different kinds of methods, and then we're going to be doing some other skills with that factoring. So first goal that we actually encounter in this unit is factoring when you have to take out the GCF. And so what does it mean to do GCF? Ultimately, when they're saying greatest common factor, because that's what GCF stands for, we're saying what's the biggest value that everything is divisible by within the problem. So in order to do this skill, we have to remember first how to do one skill prior to this, and that comes from the last unit, which is simplifying when we do division. So if we were to simplify this, remember we just do it part by part. So what is 15 divided by 5? We get an answer of 3. X squared divided by x, we just get x. And y cubed divided by y squared, we just end up with y. So the simplified form of that is 3xy. Now how does that come into play here? We're going to see in a few of the problems here. All right. So again, the idea of GCF is saying what's the biggest thing that I can divide each part by. So if we were to do first off, let's look at the numbers. If I have 12 and I have 15, what's the biggest value that I could take 12 and 15 and divide them by? The answer for that would be 3. When we look at the x's, how many x's do they have in common? Well, if I look at x cubed, that's like saying x times x times x. And there's an x here. So when I go through and start looking at it, there's one x right here and one here. There's 2 more here, but there's no more over on the other one. So the most that they actually have in common is only 1. So if we're going to simplify this, we're going to take out that x, and now we're going to reduce each part of this. So what's 12 divided by 3? We get 4. What's 15 divided by 3? We get negative 5 because there was that negative there. So I'm sorry, negative 15 divided by 3 is negative 5. With x cubed, we took one of the x's out. So now we're left with x squared. And with just the x here, I took an x out, so I have nothing left. What's really nice about this is that you can do a quick check to make sure that you did this right whenever you're doing these problems. So if I was to take this and distribute it, 3x times 4x squared would equal 12x cubed. And 3x times negative 5 would equal negative 15x. Once we've done that, we can quickly see that my answers are identical between these two, that I've gone ahead and taken out the GCF correct. All right, so you guys were pretty good at this in class. Let's go through and do a few more. Let's get right to the more challenging ones. All right, so we have 9y squared z squared minus 81y cubed z squared and 90y squared z to the fourth. So looking at the numbers, just 9, 81, and 90, the biggest value that they're all divisible by is just a 9. When we have y squared, y cubed, and y squared, the most number of y's that they have in common are only 2. And we have z squared, and z to the fourth, and most number of z's that they all share are, again, 2. So what are we left with? Well, let's go through and do the division. 9 divided by 9 leaves me just 1. Y squared over y squared is just nothing. Z squared divided by z squared is just nothing. So we're left with just a 1 here for this. Going on to the next part, we have minus 81 divided by 9 equals 9. Y cubed over y squared equals just y. Z squared divided by z squared equals just 1. And we're done. Then we've got minus for the next part. 90 divided by 9 is just 1. I'm sorry, it's just 10. Y squared divided by y squared is just 1. And z to the fourth divided by z to the second is z to the second. So from that, we've gone through and taken out the GCF of all of it. So now if we go back and check, 9y squared times z squared times 1 equals 9y squared z squared. 9y squared z squared times negative 9y is negative 81 y cubed z to the second. And then the same thing for the last one. That's it for this. So this is your answer. You're done taking out the GCF. Looking at number 3 here, the only thing that changes with this problem is now you'll see we've got right here, we've got a leading coefficient that's a negative. When we have a leading coefficient that's a negative, I just accidentally crossed off that 1 that was there. Okay, there's a 1 here, so it's 16. When there was a leading coefficient that's negative, you always factor out the negative. So what's the biggest value I could take 16, 24, and 32 and divide them by? The answer for this is 8. Now, because the leading coefficient is negative, we have to extract a negative, factor it out. So looking at the other values that are here, now let's keep going. P cubed, P squared, and P to the fourth, the most that they have in common is only 2. Q squared, Q to the third, and Q, the most they have in common is only Q. Hopefully you've seen the pattern here that the most variables they could ever have in common is the smallest of all of them. Go through and divide each one. Negative 16 divided by negative 8. This is where you got to be careful. It's a positive now, positive 2. P cubed and Q squared, we got rid of those values there, so we're left with just a P and a Q. Negative 24 divided by negative 8, we get negative 3. And then get rid of 2 P's, get rid of 1 Q's, we're only left with 1 Q. I'm sorry, we're only left with 2 Q's. Negative 32 divided by 8 is positive 4. And we're going to get rid of 2 P's and 1 Q, which will leave me with just a P2. And here's the last problem. What do you notice is different about this problem when you look at this and the other ones? Hopefully you've got them written down so you can see them a little better. But you'll notice that this is not written in standard form. When we do these problems and we factor, we always have to factor with the leading coefficient being in the front because it's in standard form. So if we take this and rearrange it, we have negative 2x squared, and then we have a positive 14. Now you'll quickly see that the leading term is negative, so it goes back to the rule we just did. The biggest factor that 2 and 14 are divisible by is 2, but we have to take out a negative because the leading term is negative. That means you're going to be left with x squared, and 14 divided by negative 2 is negative 7. That's it. Hopefully this helps. This one is one that, again, I thought you guys did really well with, so hopefully there weren't any problems with this, and you guys are going to do well on it. Take care, and we'll see you at the next video.